For most of us, we now have transfer stations, places where we bring our trash and our recyclables, and they get taken somewhere else. They get processed somewhere else. But growing up as a child, I remember the town dump, and it was a place that you would go once a week and get rid of all the trash that you had accumulated over the previous week. Back in the 70s, Richard was 10 years old, and he was walking by his local town dump in Darien, Connecticut. As he was walking by, he heard the sound off in the distance of meowing. There was a kitten somewhere at the town dump. As he explored, he found a box, and inside the box, as he opened it up, he discovered there were a few dead cats, but there was one tiny, tiny kitten that was still alive. Richard scooped it up and brought it home to his mom, and they went to the local vet, where they weren't given a lot of hope. But Richard and his mom took the kitten home and started to care for it. Well, that kitten stayed with Richard for many years, and Richard is now known as Moby. And you probably know Moby because of his incredible musical talent. He's also an author and an activist. He made a connection with his cat, Tucker, that really began a journey for him. When it comes to eating plant-based food, most people connect for one of three reasons to why they want to eat this way. It's either because of animals, because of the environment, or because of their health. In today's episode, we're going to explore all three. Let's begin by talking with Moby about his why: animals.
When I was 19, at this point Tucker was 9, I was sitting on the stairs at my mom's house petting Tucker. And, I loved this cat so much. I'd been there since he was 4 days old, and he was the happiest, nicest cat on the planet. And I was petting Tucker, and all of a sudden I had this, what I think of as like a synaptic realignment, or like an ethical synaptic realignment, where it dawned on me that Tucker the cat had 2 eyes and a central nervous system and a profoundly rich life, a rich emotional life. He had a sense of humor. He was kind. And it just dawned on me that any creature with 2 eyes and a central nervous system also has a rich emotional life. And that it just seemed like there was something realigned itself in my brain, and I just realized that I couldn't in any way be involved in anything that caused suffering to any creature that is sentient and has a rich emotional life.
For many people, that connection to another living being can just deepen and open up a whole new connection to all animals. It's not uncommon for somebody to be patting their dog at the kitchen table and really enjoying and loving every moment of it, while at the same time eating another animal. But for some people, they make that connection and it gets even deeper.
I had existed in the state of what we'll almost consider conventional ethical paradox, where I loved animals, but I also ate animals. And I think that's true for the vast majority of people on the planet. Most people who are meat eaters and eating dairy, they really like animals, but they sort of exist, they compartmentalize it. So they take their love of animals and push it into one part of their brain, and then they take their love of hamburgers and push it into another part of their brain, and almost separate the two just to make sure that they can live in this paradoxical delusion where they think it's okay to love animals and also be involved in these processes that cause death and cruelty and suffering to animals.
That compartmentalizing of animals from food to the animal is really evident when you're sharing with people the different reasons why somebody would eat plant-based. I've seen it when talking with others. I've literally seen people cover their ears and say, I just don't want to hear it. That's powerful, how we can just ignore it, go into delusion, to literally turn away from the truth. And because it's so common, it's something to notice and something to be aware of, that you can't just shove it in somebody's face. They're going to turn away from it. It's more about making a deep connection, like Moby did with his cat, Tucker. Well, Kathy Freston, who has also been on the show, had that same deep connection.
I was playing with my dog one day. She was a little Chihuahua. Her name was Lotzi. And I was rubbing her belly, and she was on her back, and she was, moving her legs kind of like a baby does, just really excited and everything. And I was just thinking to myself, I love this dog so much. I just love this dog. Animals are so amazing. And then this little voice in my head said, well, if animals are so amazing, then why are you eating them? And it was literally like my conscience speaking to me. And I sort of froze and I kept looking at her and looking into her eyes, and we were so connected. And I knew the emotions of my dog, as I'm sure any pet lover has. I knew what she was feeling. I knew what she wanted. I knew what she was afraid of. I knew what she loved. And she was just a wonderful little personality. And so I started picturing her, not on purpose, but I just started picturing her as a food animal, going into one of these places and being in a tiny little cage, cramped, and just the smell and the fear around her, and how terrified she would be. I couldn't imagine her going through this experience. And I just thought, well, Kathy, if you get this, then why are you eating meat?
That connection, that the animal that is on somebody's plate is an animal just like a cat or a dog. There is great happiness and joy that animal wants to experience. When you truly make that connection, when you don't go into the delusion, when you continually look back, Kathy's example of really seeing her dog go through the entire process that a cow or a pig has to go through, and to see that the suffering would be incredible. When you make that kind of connection and you refuse to turn away from it, it just strengthens and deepens your commitment to eating plant-based. Every now and then I'll see somebody post in an online discussion group that this is the reason that everybody should be eating this way. And of course, that's kind of ridiculous, because there are many reasons why somebody would want to eat plant-based. And what is most important is, why do you want to eat this way? You see, my reason may not connect for you. That may not be important for you. So it's more important to fully support whatever reason somebody is doing this. Because the truth is, whatever your reason is, it supports each reason. If you do this because you have a deep connection to animals and you want to reduce the suffering of animals, it's also going to make a positive difference for the environment. It's going to make a positive difference for your health. This is truly one of those things that is fantastic, because it's win-win-win. No matter what your reason is, when you connect with it, it makes a positive difference for every single reason. Next up, let's explore the environmental side of eating plant-based. And we'll begin the conversation with the sisters, Heather Bell and Jenny Engel. They are known as the Spork Foods Sisters.
we both were interested in veganism through studying about environmental issues in college. And, just opening our eyes up to the impact of our food choices on the environment sparked an interest in looking further into where our food came from and the impact that it has on the planet and animals and all of that. And that led us into this lifestyle.
Yeah, we were originally sort of drawn to it from an environmental perspective. We were both environmental science majors in college, separately, Jenny at UC Santa Cruz and myself at San Francisco State University. And so once we started learning about the impact on the environment, then we started looking into it further and decided to go vegan.
According to one study, a person who eats plant-based, in other words, doesn't consume any meat, eggs, or dairy, is on average saving 600 gallons of water per day. Each and every day, you save 600 gallons of water. Now imagine taking a quicker shower and using water in the sink that much less and not washing your car and not watering your lawn. You can't have that kind of an impact, 600 gallons a day. It's an amazing amount of difference that it makes when you eat plant-based. And that's just water. There are other positive impacts as well.
I took a class on rainforests and just the degradation of the rainforest for cattle grazing alone, and knowing how much amazing old forests were being cut down just specifically for cattle grazing, and the impact that that had with burning the trees, just the runoff and all of that on the environment was so shocking that it seems undeniable that someone could say, if I'm not eating meat, there's just a direct connection there, just specifically with cattle grazing alone. And then you look into other aspects of the meat and dairy industry. You look into fish farms and how very much the oceans are being affected by these huge farms, genetically modified fish getting into the general population and causing fish populations to decline so rapidly because their reproductive systems aren't developed. I mean, the more layers you peel away of this onion of ours, the more intense it gets and the more undeniable it is that you as one person does have such an impact on the future of our planet.
This planet that we live on, of course, only has so many resources. And if we are continually tearing down massive amounts of forests, hundreds and hundreds of acres at a time, just so that we can have cattle grazing on that land, versus the amount of land that it would take to simply grow vegetables. Most people don't make that deep connection. That connection that in order for a cow to live on the planet, you need to have huge amounts of grain so that that cow can eat. And then you take that one cow and you eat it. Well, all of that grain and all of the land for that grain could have been used just for vegetables, saving all of that extra work. Russell Simmons had something to share when it came to our planet.
First of all, if it doesn't happen, there won't be any planet to worry about. It won't be like as many species as we have destroyed, we'll be one of them soon because we won't be able to inhabit the planet. The planet won't be inhabitable. So you have to at least that's true.
When you take a look at how much land is involved in growing grain just to feed an animal so that you can then turn that animal into food, and you break it down into pounds, and you really look at how much meat you produce versus if instead you took that land and grew vegetables, you could grow enough vegetables to feed the world. And the problem, of course, is in the meantime, using all these animals in the ways in which we're producing all this food is destroying our planet, not just in eliminating the number of trees, but you have massive runoffs and you have really, as Russell Simmons says, a poisoning of our planet.
Poisoning the planet and the people of the planet, and what is equal to the worst cosmic disaster in the history of the world, reenacted every year over and over, worse each time. It's something that you wouldn't want to participate if you were mindful on that subject. I mean, of course, people are mindful on some things and oblivious on others. But as people wake up, they're moving away from animal products.
That mindfulness that Russell is talking about, of course, ties in earlier with the delusion, the fact that people just want to turn away, that they want to bury their head in the sand and not pay attention to what's really happening here. When you are mindful of what's truly going on, at the same time, you are mindful of opening your heart and your mind to what's happening. Really, that's exactly what Moby spoke about when he was patting Tucker. He had that moment where there was a connection of understanding and a connection of his heart. Kathy Freston had the exact same thing when she was patting her dog. For every single person that you hear speaking about eating plant-based, they're all really saying ultimately the same thing. There's a connection to the moment and a turning towards instead of a turning away. And oftentimes there's that opening of the heart. And the heart may be for the animals. It may be for the environment, or it may be for their own health. And finally today, let's hear about the third reason that most people start eating plant-based, and that's for health. That's right. This body that you have, the better you fuel it, the better it can help you through your life. Let's touch in with Dr. Douglas Lisle. He's the author of The Pleasure Trap.
The truth is, the average American is going to live to 80 years old eating crap with both hands. Okay, now, if you are very health oriented, you're probably going to live a few years longer than that. So you might say, wow, all this effort and what I think is really, really healthy is only going to be responsible for maybe 5 years difference in my life expectancy. And that is true. However, the truth is that the fitness and condition of the organism will be unbelievably different. So the reason people could live to 80 today, despite their incredible diets, is because the environment is now so benign that you could be in a little wheelchair and essentially not being able to move. You're just literally sitting in a chair, barely functional, and you're still alive. And that is how people live. They live the last 10, 15 years of their life in horrendous condition. And so this is not so much, but they can manage to live because it's actually hard to kill people. You know, the genes are just so good at survival. They can manage their way through just about anything. So it is not actually the fear of death that should be driving your behavior. It should be the desire for an excellent life.
I really enjoyed that interview with Dr. Lisle, and that point about we are good as a society at keeping the human body alive. But what we're doing by eating plant-based is doing our best to stack the odds in our favor that we're doing more than just keeping the body alive, that it is thriving. And that to me is what this whole thing around health is about, doing the very best we can, fueling the body. Doing the very best we can. That transition into that can sometimes take years. Here's Dr. Thomas Campbell, one of the co-authors of the China study.
Well, it was a very slow transition in my teens. Our whole family was eating sort of the healthy American diet in my early teens. And we slowly, as my dad's research results started coming in, he started looking at other results and so forth, we slowly started giving up. It's very typical transition, gave up sort of the red meat. We never were huge red meat eaters, but gave up sort of the red meat and then just used lean meats sort of as flavoring. We would get chicken fried rice at the Chinese restaurant, for example. We wouldn't get any main meat dish, but chicken fried rice or some meat, shrimp in the lo mein or whatever. And then in my college years, I gave up. Sometime in my late teen years, I gave up all meat. Our family gave up all meat, the whole family. And then in my 20s, I gave up all dairy. And then in the past, 5-10 years, I've really focused on getting more processed foods out. So I've been more of a whole food, plant-based diet eater. So you can see it's been a very slow transition over, 25 years or so.
no matter what your reason for eating plant-based, and no matter what your transition, it's a path for everyone. You might decide today, that's it, I'm going 100% plant-based, and that's what works for you. Or maybe, in Dr. Campbell's situation, you transition over years, a little bit at a time. Either way, it's progress, it's a journey, and it's often talked about that way. So whatever works for you, again, much like your why, then that is what is appropriate for you. Next up is Dr. Michael Greger. He is the author of How Not to Die.
There's this overwhelming mountain of evidence supporting this kind of diet. I mean, the good news is we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors. People just don't know, just aren't aware of the power that they possess over their disease risk. And so I think once people do, then look, people, even if they don't care about other things happening in the world, they should care about their own health, their family's health, and start eating healthier.
There you have it. The 3 reasons that most people will share that they eat plant-based. And what's most important is that you connect to one of them. Now, all that being said, if you can connect to more than one, and it doesn't have to be equally, in other words, you might connect for 90% that you are doing this for your health, and 10%, yes, because it makes a difference for animals. That's even going to improve your odds as well. Connecting on multiple levels will make a deeper connection. Next week, let's get together again and talk more about bringing great plant-based food into your life. And until we get together again next week, go enjoy some great plant-based food. For whatever reason, connects deeply to you. Take care.